Hi guys. Hi. Today we're going to get into this book. So I want to touch basis on it and kind of waiting on those that need to get in here and watch yet. And I need to know if you can hear me. If not, please let me know. um, just waiting to see if anybody else is popping on. There we go. Hi Heidi, can you hear me? All is good. Okay, because I don't have the headphones on, so I wanted to make sure if you can hear me well. We're gonna touch basis on this book, and it's called Dr. Jack Green, and I think it's Greenan, The History of Dissociative Identity Disorder. And it was a pretty decent book. I took a lot of notes in it. There was some things that I found kind of strange, and I take everything with a grain of salt, so that way I know how it is and if it's good or not. Um, so to get into the start of it, it's not a very thick book. I'm gonna see if I can lower the camera just a bit here. Hi, Duke. um, it's not very long. The weird thing I also found about this book, it had no page numbers. It was a basic, if you look at it, it's a very basic printout. So it's not very thick, see? And the guy in the back of the book, it's a little bit different, but it says that a Detroit native, Grenan holds master's degree in education and psychology and a doctoral degree in hypnotherapy. He's formerly worked as a teacher, coach, and assistant principal at Grand Haven High School and as a principal at a U.S. Job Corps Center in Grand Rapids. Currently, he works with the Muscogee County court system and has a private practice. So he's a very busy guy. And I could not find a date for when this book was published. That's the other weird part. So no pages. That's odd. Duke says for a book. Well, it has the. Yeah, it's just weird. It's like typed like an old typewriter. I don't know if you guys can see that. And I was taking notes. You can see where I was taking notes. So there's a few things that I liked about it and a few things that I didn't like about it. The fact that it was really short kind of blew me over. Um, The other thing was it did at least have references in the back, and those were between like 2004 to like 2004, even stuff from like 1906. I mean, he did a really good history background check, but it was very different. Heidi says sounds like a self-publish, almost like a term paper. Yeah, so it was like I kind of want to recommend it because it does have some good stuff. Let's get into that and see what you guys all think. And you can ask questions as we go along and find out what we think of this book. And, is this something that we should promote or not promote? And I'm just going to kind of follow my highlights in my book because that's easiest. And the first part was Introduction to the Literature Review. And this was accumulating history. So basically, he's collecting history from like 1906 and on up about DID. He wants to dig into where it came from, how it was. So that was kind of cool. And then he also gets into understanding where disassociation comes from. So I kind of like that. I'm like, okay, at least he's digging into the history. And he had in here one benefit of this approach was an accumulation of historical evidence of the existence of disassociation in humans that may result in a better understanding of how and why the mind disassociates. It is believed that the additional information will result in a better understanding of the phenomena, leading to better treatment for those who suffer from the condition. So he's digging into it. Heidi says maybe this was her dissertation to get his doctorate degree. Maybe. He talks a lot about, putting it out there. He also puts statement of the problem. Dissociative identity disorder is a coping mechanism that eventually leads the victim of severe trauma to dysfunction. To further enhance the therapist's ability to assist these unfortunate victims who unconsciously resort to DID to survive, it is important that a better understanding of the historical aspects of dissociatives is established to add to the understanding of this coping behavior. So it's kind of like I tell people again, DID is very real, but in and of itself, it's also fake because it is a coping mechanism. So let's use an example, shall we? Let's say dementia, which, me, Heidi, we've got into that conversation. We joke about it because it is kind of like dementia. But unlike dementia, this can be cured through psychotherapy. Some people, it takes years and years, a lot of years, even a lot of years to just get diagnosed, because it is such a hidden disorder. So next, let's see here. I'm going to kind of zip through here. Here's another example. What is dissociative identity disorder? Oh, Heidi says, I agree, pure coping strategy. It is, yes. Duke says, I think humans always had some form of DID or PTSD. Think about the caveman days, man running away from like a lion trying to eat him. Actually, that's a very well explained thing, Duke, and Duke is my brother. If you read Waking the Tiger, it explains in great detail how a zebra, when they're being impaled by a lion, they will disassociate and freeze. You got fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, okay? And so people that have DID, they got sight, smell, sound, and touch that trigger them into a dissociative episode. And so they have to deal with that, and they struggle with it a lot. We're just now figuring out how the mind works. Yes, brain scans have helped tremendously with this disorder to prove that it is very real. They've even had college students, as Colin Ross stated, go in and pretend to have DID. And as the brain scans show, they can tell it's fake because one part of the brain ain't shutting off and another one's lighting up. Somebody with DID, when they disassociate or are triggered, there's a part of their brain that shuts down and then another one lights up, and they have a different personality, a different aspect of things, a different time period. So what is dissociative identity disorder? Disassociation is the disconnection of various thoughts, memories, and emotions from the conscious self that are usually connected. They can result in behavioral dysfunction as the individual attempts to connect to others in their personal world of work and family. The person is often unaware of some self-defeating behaviors that previously worked at a younger age. It is detrimental as an adult. Now, what they're talking about is, and this usually leads to problems in their work and personal relationships. What they're talking about here is, as a child, when I had DID, it wasn't really DID. It was a coping mechanism that worked. So as a child, nobody noticed because it was my way of coping, and it was working, and it felt good, and I was safe in my mind, even though the trauma was happening from age 2 on up. And so they erase memories, keep memories. The alternative states, they keep everything a big secret, kind of. As you get older and you get into teenhood, people start to notice that your behavior is erratic and something's not right. One minute you're one person and the next minute you're another person, and it gets very noticeable, and you're like, I don't like this. What am I going to do? And then as you get into adulthood and your brain is fully developed, then the coping mechanisms are no longer working. The alternative states are causing havoc because they're using coping mechanisms based on your past. So then it interferes with life. It interferes with relationships, etc. Duke says, we're just now figuring out how the mind, I did read that already, how the mind works. Okay. Now, I'm going to go a little further into this because this is a pretty short book, but I like to read some of the information that this man has written. According to Masterson, 1990, persons who have behavior disorders are unable to accomplish the task of finding a fit with their environment and are compelled to resort to self-destructive patterns. Evidence of a false self that protect them from feeling bad at the cost of a meaningful and fulfilling life. This false self, unable to experiment, induces lack of self-esteem as the person has to settle for rigid, destructive behavior that avoids life's challenges but leads to feeling failure. Last hopes and unfulfilled dreams and despair, Matterson 1990 states. Although there are many other definitions, Masterson's definition is accurate, simple, and to the point. So what he's saying is that people with DID, which is not mentioned a lot, is they deal with self-harm, self-destructive behaviors, enmeshment, age regression states. You have to excuse me when I'm a little bit nervous. I have a little bit of a speech freeze response. Heidi says, like I say, it was just dissociative identity. The disorder is the maladaptive interaction with the world. Yeah, yeah. And you know, in some countries, being disassociative is considered really, you know, different and unique. People walk on nails, people walk on coals, and they disassociate doing that. I do believe I read that in I think it was Colin Ross's book. And so, I mean, everybody can dissociate to a point. Car accidents, things like that. The difference between our disassociation and their disassociation is we have amnesia. We are unable to remember what had happened because a part of our brain stores it, but it's not in our long-term memory. It's kind of put in a short-term memory with an alternative state, and they hold those memories because they feel that we're not ready for them. And in some way, we're not, until we learn to cope and learn to say, okay, this is in the past. We can deal with this. So next is background to the problem. There has been ongoing discussion and disagreement among psychologists, psychiatrists, physicians, and others, not only about dissociative identity disorder. Since the days of Freud, Chercott, and Janet, the description of hysterical episodes initiate curiosity, research into these behaviors. This paper takes the position that dissociative identity disorder not only exists, but is an ingenious, effective, and sane coping mechanism of the human mind in response to the most insane experiences that some unfortunate human beings encounter. So what they're saying here is we encounter some very serious trauma. Some of it even relates to almost like death experiences. Okay? Yet this same coping mechanism, disassociation, which is created from the survival of the self, later becomes a destructive barrier to the growth and stability of the self. Okay? These dissociative initiated coping strategies that protect the self in reaction to the childhood trauma become ineffective as the demands of the adult life require more and different coping strategies. This, in part, is why the diagnosis of DID is often not confirmed until the victim of trauma is an adult. Okay? Coping behavior that was successful or tolerated at earlier ages become unsuccessful and even detrimental in adult situations such as the workplace and or adult personnel relationships. Okay? Duke says, no apology necessary for your freezing and or stutter. Just you going live proves you are facing your fears and getting better. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, next. Most people exhibit dissociative behaviors, seek treatment, meet with several therapists until a diagnosis of DID is correctly evaluated. This is due in part to the masking of the disorder by the client and, in some cases, a lack of training in diagnosing this condition by therapists. So keep in mind, there is a lot of going through therapy. Now, my therapy, I started very young during our court trial with my sister's husband. Okay, and I'm not afraid to say that because I've been through a lot with this man, first-degree sexual assault of a child. Okay, and I had to deal with that. And to deal with that, I had a counselor at the age of about 14 to, I want to say about 16, if I'm correct, Duke. You were older than me and remember better than I do. Duke remembers those time periods that I had to deal with this. And he also remembers me switching when panicked or having to be put on a stand. During that court trial, my abuser's lawyer was part of the FMSF, which is the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. And he was bound and determined that this abuse didn't happen by proving that I couldn't remember dates and times. And you want to explain to me how a child, 9 years old to 14, is supposed to remember every weekend, date, and time and place that the abuse took place? No. So I'm glad that that foundation is now shut down and the people that were a part of it are being punished for what they've done. So anyway, okay. Now in this part, let's see. Oh, this part talks a little bit about the CPTSD part of this. Usually dissociative identity disorder or any sort of trauma-related disorder like BPD comes with CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? And you usually get diagnosed with that first before they proceed to do more assessments and more diagnostics, okay? The literature review examined the history of disassociation dating back to the ancient writings of the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, and continued through the Middle Ages. Excuse me. It continued with the introduction of hypnosis and the work of Freud, Janet Cherka, and others with hysterical patients. This hysterical study of disassociation included written documentation of the diagnosis and treatment of soldiers from World War I, World War II, and the Korean and veteran wars who suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and provided evidence of dissociative behaviors. Now, I'm going to bring something else up. I am part of the American Legion here in my county, and a lot of the veterans, you can tell by their movements and eyes, their protective stance, their will to be honest, their will to be safe. And sometimes you can tell they're scared or they don't want to deal with some of the things that are happening in today's world. They have been through a lot. They've served our country, and some of these were very young boys when they went into war. One, for the parade that I'll be doing this weekend, is a Korean veteran. He's the oldest member, I do believe, of the Legion. And I'm proud and honored to be around these people, especially the women as well. The women are amazing. So, Jewel came. Hi, Jewel. Hey, Mom. Hope everything is going well. Gonna lurk and work on some more drawings. Yes, honey, you go ahead. Heidi says, hi, Jewel. Long time no talk. Okay. Let me scroll through again. Like I said, I'm not going to read the whole book. I'm just going to give you some of what's in the book. Also in the book, you will find, and you can see here, I'm hoping I can get the light to balance right. There are questionnaires and research questions in here that are circled. And it has to do with helping you to ask questions and figure things out with this and whatnot. So Jewel says, hi, Heidi. Hope you have been well. Okay. Oh, and also in this book, if I can get it to not stop glaring, you can see they give the definitions of everything in here, okay? They give the definition of terms for alter identity, amnesia, blackout, dissociate, dissociation, dissociative identity disorder, and host identity integration, blah, 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 blah. There's about 2-3 pages of that, okay? They also give a literature review, ancient historical writings. Some of this, it's hard to grasp when they get into some of the religious aspect, some of the Egyptian part of it, you know. The thing that kind of spooked me, and I almost just got the book down and go, no, I'm not reading this. I didn't care for the fact that they brought in the Book of the Dead in here, but again, it's history. So they start talking about, and I think it's about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 pages. And I got a note here. Explains the first known cases for disassociation under the Book of the Dead and a man named Ahi. Ani, sorry. And it's from 1895. So they actually talk about, how people, the body and mind and the spiritual world and things like that. Again, keep an open mind. It is history. It's not about today, it's the history. So give it a chance. The next thing I got into, which was religion being brought into this. And it's a hard subject for me because religion has harmed me tremendously over the years. I have my own beliefs and I don't talk about them openly because it is my private life. But religion was used against me numerous times to control my behaviors, to control my alternative states, calling me possessed or, spiritually not right and things like that. So I'm going to read this little piece here. Just as the ancient Egyptians believed in the duality of the self, that a person is more than a body but is also composed of a mind and spirit, so too did many pagans and early Christians. The followers of these religions also believed that a person could be possessed or inhabited by another evil soul who would take over the person's body and mind. History of the COPTS, 2004. Many of these stories tell of the spiritual transformation of a person that results in behaviors very out of character due to this possession. And this is the part where it was really hard. I just like, okay, I'm going to keep reading. We'll find out what it's at. These stories contain similarities to modern day behaviors observed in people diagnosed as dissociative. Some examples of these behavior changes include not remembering their actions, a change from usual calm behavior to very aggressive behavior, and even speaking in different voices. Okay. So they're getting into that, and there's quite a few pages about that: love and hate, Egyptian beliefs, earth, fire, air, and water, which were deemed to control the earth. With the Egyptian belief of good versus evil, the belief of good versus evil is a very basic concept that exists in most cultures, and this concept is important in understanding how disassociation affects a person. Some of the selves in a dissociative are seen as a negative or evil influence, while others are seen as a positive or good influence. This separation of the selves in good versus evil is important for a therapist to investigate in order to assist the dissociative client. So, excuse me, what they're saying here is if you have a religious background that had harmed your DID or dissociative episodes, there should be a history check. A lot of people, some people claim they have had religious abuse. It is hard to track. It is hard to do a history check, but it will show most of the time in medical records, in drawings, in past history. That's why it's so vital that you take items into your therapist once you establish a good relationship. My brother was very helpful with that because he had videotaped a lot of my teenhood. And so I was able to use some of that video footage to help me remember what had happened to me, what I'd gone through. I have video footage of me being in religious cult wear. And my brother even has mentioned that he has taken me to some of the ceremonies that they had. He had no idea what they were doing. He thought it was helping me because at that time he didn't know about mental illness. He didn't know about DID. He didn't even know about half the abuse that I had gone through with Sister Mary. So there was a lot done that made things very confusing. Even my own daughter, who's listening right now, she remembers me going through some of the dissociative episodes of dealing with religious abuse and religious cult issues. That's why when she was growing up, I had given her a choice and stated that she can decide whatever religion she would like to be or what she wants to do. I also apologize for the noise in the background. I don't know if you can hear it, but there are a lot of fireworks going off tonight. So, now, the constant battle for survival and existence, seen as a battle of good versus evil, is consistent in all of the literature reviewed. In Egyptian, Roman, and Greek philosophy, the belief was that man is in an ongoing struggle between good and evil. This idea is central in the descriptions of possessions by the devil, demons, and other entities. So he gets into that, and it's a hard thing to kind of read and get into, But when you're ready and you feel like you've been through some of this, or you have a history of past abuse done by religious issues, don't be afraid to seek help and to try to understand it and get better. And just remember, it's in the past. It can be worked through, you know. Can't hear it. Oh, good. It's somewhat far away, but I got the fan blowing too because it's extremely, humidity is very high here. So now they kind of do get into the Catholic issue a little bit, which kind of caught my eye because my abuse was based on old Roman Catholic abuse by a nun, Sister Mary, who is now in prison and serving time for stealing children. And she did try to steal me at one point, but it didn't work. My dad refused to sign the paperwork. So in medieval Europe, the Catholic Church and state were closely intertwined. The state, usually a feudal lord, used the beliefs of the church to ensure its place of power over the serfs. The lords accomplished this by having the churches preach that serfs were serfs because that is the way God meant it to be. Anyone who thought otherwise must be against God and thus evil, who be dealt with swiftly and severely. This philosophy in some instances led to accusations of witchcraft. Now, I want to explain some of that and why it's so important. Keep in mind, my family had a history of, I'll just come out and say it. My family originated from Switzerland. And during the 1800s, we actually had a great aunt, Jacques, who had been burned as a witch at the stake. And that was why the family had relocated, because she was different. Her husband had passed away. She was trying to make money to feed her two children. And of what I have found out in the French archives was that she was deemed a witch because she was selling medicinal, like herbs, out of the fields and woods. It's hard to understand some of the stuff that's written because, for one, it's in French. It had to be figured out. My grandmother was the one that did some of the figuring. It was very interesting to find out, though, and I'm thankful that the family is safe. Half of the family moved to California and half the family moved here. So anyway, let's get farther into the book. There's also a section called Historical Connection Between Disassociation and Hypnosis. I am not real fond of hypnosis. I've never had it done, nor do I wish to. Hypnosis to me is, it seems to me, I think it would cause more disassociation, so I don't really care for it. I prefer methods like EMDR, CBT, DBT, EFT, and DNMS, which is something new. Please look into it. Have your therapist look into it. DNMS is a very good strategy that is helping a lot of people. I am also part of the studies for dissociative identity disorder that is helping others get better. So, now next, the impact of war. Trauma to understand the pain that causes DID in children. Imagine during these. Oh, okay. Imagine this as a child. Okay. The impact of war trauma. Okay. The result of war is the opportunity to gather great quantities of documentation of the impact that severe stress and trauma have on human beings. Okay. World War I optimistically labeled the war to end all wars, was just the beginning of generations of hostilities that have resulted in millions of physical and mental injuries. The injured included civilians and soldiers alike. The following description of life as a soldier in World War created a vivid picture of a soldier's daily trials. Now I'm going to stop reading this a second. Keep in mind, the wars, it doesn't just affect the veterans that have been through it. If they don't get help, if they don't get therapy, it affects their children, their great-grandchildren, etc. It can be a generational thing. If these soldiers and their wives are not healed, keep in mind, if a certain kind, like spanking back then was considered norm, and now in today's society, it's considered abusive, to an extent. So it's like changes are being made, but again, it's like back in our day, my brother had stated even multiple times, we'll give you something to cry about. You weren't supposed to cry. You weren't supposed to show an emotion, okay? My brother still deals with those issues. I'm getting much better at it because I receive a lot of therapy. So I still fight with it though. Emotions are very difficult. I think I hate feeling emotions and physical somatic symptoms than I do processing the trauma. The body feels things more than the mind at times. Um, Heidi says, I stay away from hypnosis. Yeah, me too. I don't need more times that I don't remember things. Duke says, hypnosis, I think, is like a placebo effect. Unless you have some belief in it, it won't work. I kind of wonder the same thing. I've never had it done, nor do I wish to, and I do avoid it. I just don't care for something like that. I think a lot of therapists and psychologists and stuff are leaning away from it. They're finding that the EMDR that is used on war veterans and CPTSD patients and BPD patients seems to be more effective, especially cognitive behavioral therapy as well. So, fighting a modern war means to entrance yourself in a hole filled with water and to sit in it for 10 days without moving. It means looking and listening and keeping a grenade in your hand. It means eating cold food and sinking in the mud and carrying your food through the dark night and wandering hour after hour around the same point without ever finding it. It means being hit by grenades which come from who knows where. Okay? This description leaves out the horror of rats eating a man to sleep, or eating men in their sleep, the decaying bodies of friends. And they kind of give more vivid detail, but I'm not going to get into that. They talk about dysentery, lack of food, lack of sleep, trench holes, diseases. While the physical deprivation suffered during war is horrific, the emotional stress may be even greater. Now, what I want to talk about here is, okay, this is war related. But these war related incidences, if the parents are not receiving some sort of help, some of this stuff can pass on to the children. And this is where I like to get into some of what me and my brother have been through. My dad believed the tougher you are, the better you are. Tough it up. Both of us have had fingers cut off. My brother had his cut off in a manure spreader. Mine was slammed off in a door, which my brother did by accident when I was chasing him. Both of us have scars from falls, hits, hurts, growing up on a farm, and from abuse. My brother was fortunate enough he did not receive the amount of abuse that I had because I was the youngest. He could defend himself from whomever was hurting him, and he was able to speak. We've had animal bites. I've been rolled by cows. I don't know if Duke, I don't think you've ever, were you rolled? I know Bertha came after you a few times, but I don't think he was rolled like I was because I was little. Um, I could have been stepped on so many times. I don't know why I didn't. I've been electrocuted till I wet myself by the electric fence. I've been pushed down the stairs. I've been through a lot. Okay. Um, and I'm not going to get into all the detail of that because that's not what this is about, but I'm just giving you an idea of why that's so vital that it's kind of compared to war victims. But keep in mind, the worst thing is, guys, we were children, not adults. So can you imagine, okay, these adults are suffering from this stuff, okay? We were children, little kids. So we had to figure out a way to cope because we couldn't just leave. We couldn't get out, okay? And it wasn't temporary. We had to live through this. So as time went on, we just learned to cope our own ways, and that's what made it difficult for us. So, um, I don't know if it says, okay, it does tell me how long, half hour. Okay. I'm going to grab a drink of water real quick here, if you don't mind. I'm getting a little dry. Now, it gets back into Freud a little bit here. It was believed even by Freud in 1919 that with the end of the war, most of the neurotic diseases that had been brought about by the war disappeared. Vanderhart, 2000, page 42, however, stated some veterans and psychiatrists felt differently. Of all the German soldiers wounded during the war, 617,000 men suffered from war trauma. Entire companies suffered from vomiting and fits of crying. The British statistics were much smaller. That was at 80,000 men diagnosed as suffering from war neurosis. The British credit the great variances to an underreporting, though few that's a big word, longitudinal studies followed the outcome of these cases. It was clear to all that the development of mental disorders may be related to traumatic experiences. Now, I'm going to bring up this again, which I try to do with every video, and that is when I get disassociative, which is more and more far and few between, I get this hot flush. My body temperature will raise tremendously. I will be sweating. I will be either shaking. My eyes can dilate. I can stare off. And sometimes I won't respond for about a minute or up to even like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. My brother has been in some of the sessions where this happens. And I feel like I'm going to throw up. Excuse me. The reason for that is because my body is changing dynamics and the brain is shutting down in one place and lighting up in another, causing the body to go, oh no, panic, panic. And I'm disassociating, okay? And when that happens, my mind is going to another part self, okay? And so a age regress state or a teen state or whatever state of mind is going to take over that best copes with the trauma that's being talked about will take over. And it can be triggered out as well due to something causing me to panic. Okay. So I try to stay calm as best as I can. If I feel that something is causing me anxiety, and now I'm getting better at picking up on it, I will detour from that situation or I will give a hint. My brother has been through that where he notices I'm not myself. I'll be pacing. I have been known to rock, and he'll be like, "You want to go home?" Yep. Because I can feel it where I'm not feeling good, So, he kind of gets into feeling good, So, he kind of gets into, I don't know if I want to get into this part here. It's kind of basically the coping and psychology again. He really gets into the big details, which I don't care for. As a person with DID, I wish that some of the writing was into like how to deal with some of the disassociative spells, and he really doesn't get into that much. He states here, dissociation was not limited or caused only by childhood trauma. As these researchers discovered, trauma in general, which the mind refuses to integrate in the memory, seems to be a strong cause for dissociative protective coping. In the conclusion of the study by Rosenfields Hands in 1989, investigating the relationship between war trauma and PTSD, even after 40 years, up to 50% of veterans showed signs of PTSD. I wish he would I get that he likes to compare because it is a big comparison, but I notice he doesn't talk about the BPD either. He also doesn't talk about the OSDD or anything like that. So he doesn't get into anything other than war veterans, which is fine, but I wish he would expand his study. The Vietnam vets experienced nightmares or dissociative phenomena such as flashbacks, and we all know what flashbacks are. The debate of whether war trauma can cause dissociative coping behaviors seemed to put to rest. In another study of the connection of combat trauma to PTSD and DID, Melman, Brahma, Olga, Flores, Melise in 1992 turned their attention to the suggestive factors of predisposition of individuals to PTSD and dissociative behaviors. It was suggested that the dysfunction in the neurotransmitters could underlie PTSD. Okay. Now Duke says, I think the best way to explain it to people is those few seconds just before a car crash, that instant panic. It's very similar to that. Yeah. It's like you kind of don't know what to do. That fight, flees, or fawn kind of sets in, but instead, unlike a normal human, which my mind just basically goes, oh, let's send this one out, and one of them deal with those things, the fight, flight, or fawn. Duke says, you slam on the brakes and just freeze. You know you're going to crash, but the brain doesn't know what to do. Yeah. And it's weird because in survival issues, me and Duke are both very able to handle, how do I put this, extreme situations. So emergency-wise, if our bodies are not the ones being harmed, and we see somebody else being harmed or hurt. My brother, I will use my brother as an example because I'm sure he doesn't mind. My brother at one point in time has been through two traumatic experiences in his adulthood. One was when his airbag went off in his vehicle and blew up in his face. It literally made him petrified for months to drive with an airbag. He was considering ripping all the airbags out of his vehicles. The smell bothered him. He could not get that smell out of his nose. The shattering of the bag bothered him. The noise bothered him. And then prior to that, when he lived on the farm, we had dealt with an Amish girl being run over by a wagon. And my brother, as a gentleman as he is, the Amish didn't seem to really care. They seemed like, okay, he just said, my sister passed, we don't need to call anybody. My brother's like, no, we need to call an ambulance. We need to make sure, everything's done correctly. Amish don't like that. They have their own beliefs, and we respect that. However, the fact that my brother was involved, he felt it best to let, emergency personnel know. And of what he had told me, he had seen the young girl laying in the ditch and she was dead. And for him, it was very traumatic. It still bothers him today. And he felt the need to cover her with his coat. And these are things that don't go away too easily. You will always remember that. You will always see those things. And he's processed through it. He deals with it, but it still bothers him. Yes, and Duke says the Amish don't know CPR. Yeah, they don't. Their beliefs, they still believe the earth is still flat. Me and him have both grew up around Amish communities, so we're very familiar with their beliefs and their religion and their dress codes. I am more into their beliefs because I've read on it, I've studied on it. Plus, the cult that I was in was very similar with the keeping your head covered, excuse me, and the dresses and whatnot. And it's difficult, especially for the women. The women do most of the cooking, cleaning, taking care of children, and that is their duty. And they believe very heavily in that. And if you leave, you're not allowed to take your children with you. You have to leave without your children. I can't even imagine how traumatic that is, So, and another thing he gets into in this book, sorry, jump subjects. Duke said, they're not bad people, just very religious and way behind the times. Yes. The Mennonites are picking up better now with the time period, and they're starting to get more involved in the English. But again, there's a lot of things they don't understand, and it's difficult. Some of the stuff that they go through. But anyway, so here in this part, he starts getting into the people that have suffered with DID. And one is the case of Mary Reynolds, and he talks about Ainsley Bourne, Chris Sizemore, Shirley Mason, who is known as Sybil, and Billy Milligan. Okay, so he talks about their history in here, which is pretty cool. And I'll read a tiny bit for you so you can understand it. Current literature supports the supposition that dissociation could be evaluated on a continuum as put forth by Dr. Brun. And I've read Dr. Brun's books. He does a lot of good books. This continuum consists of daydreaming and highly hypnosis at one extreme and completely separate personalities that alternate control over the host as the other extreme. The one trend that appears to be gaining momentum in the research is the move towards focusing on developing and providing early diagnosis, better therapy, and improved training for therapists. The condition of DID will no longer be seen as a rare coping behavior, but as an understandable reaction to severe trauma. Okay. I'm liking that they are really working on getting into better treatment. So in this one section here, the case studies of multiple personality disorder and dissociative identity disorder, and that's the part where he gets into talking about Mary Reynolds, born in 1785 in Pennsylvania. He goes back quite a ways. So, and he goes into the next ones and the next ones, which I read, but I don't want to bore you, and I'm almost an hour in already, so I try to keep things kind of under an hour. The other thing that he gets into, which I've theorized on about my own abuse, is Project Bluebird, CIA archives, and Colin Ross. Now, the reason I talk about this vaguely is because, again, it is a theory for me, because I have no proof of, am I part of some sort of project dealt with by military background? We don't know. All I know is we had a huge military background, and a lot of people on my dad's side were part of the military, and the fact that our state senator was friends with our great grandfather made me wonder if we weren't part of some of this stuff to see how we would handle trauma. Or let's say they were traumatized and it was passed on generation to generation. That wouldn't make us a project, but it would make us prone to be abused. Okay. Now, working to, okay. Anyway, this is chapter 3, which is summary and recommendations, summary of literature review. And he states here, over a 2-year period, more than 800 books and hundreds of journal articles, internet websites, and various other sources were reviewed in the search information relevant to the history of multiple personality disorder / dissociation. See, I don't care for the way he goes back and forth with claiming DID and then MPD. It's known as DID. I don't know why I understand he needs to add in the history part, but it's like, it's DID. Because we're not multiple people. It's a dissociative identity issue. You know. The literature review resulted in the location and consolidation of information from ancient, medieval, pre- and post-war eras to the present. The ideas of theorists long recognized as contributing to the various psychological theories spanning more than 100 years include James, Breuer, Fraud, or S. Fraud, A. Fraud, Prince, Ross, Chercott, Janet, Turnus, Greaves, Cluft, and others were reviewed for their thoughts and theories in hysteria and disassociation. The result of these process, a document that presents the history of dissociative identity disorder that will assist therapists and patients alike to better understand DID. Now, why did I want to read that? Well, I want you to keep in mind that people that really do have the disorder are part of the studies. Everything that is done for me and done with me is used in the research of DID. According to my therapist, I'm not allowed to know all the details, but it has helped over 1,000 people of what I've been told that really do have this disorder. It gives them hope. It gives them an understanding. Heidi here, she is known to be as multiticity. She prefers to be multiple, which means she doesn't want to integrate herself. She would prefer to not have the amnesia and keep herself. And I respect that because that is a way of healing. Okay. She's processed her trauma. She's been at this for over, I do believe, 30 years, as I'd stated prior. For me, I kind of want to keep pushing to integrate, but I'm still at a standstill of 50-50 because I'm dealing with issues that I'm not able to integrate because of the new issues with insurances. And I'm not going to get into politics, but I will just put it this way. It is hurting mental health, people that have mental health issues. They are suffering tremendously, and not just me, people, veterans, anybody with a mental health disorder because of the new, you get my point, government. People are hurting, and they're hurting so bad. And children are confused because they don't know if they have a disorder or they don't have a disorder. They have a disorder or they don't have a disorder. Some of them want a disorder because they don't want to face reality of life because of the way the government is running. So in some ways, it's not really their fault. You know, Heidi says, I like Cluft and Ross. I do too. Yeah, they got great books. I've read, I think I got 2 or 3 of his books here that I've read through. And again, I still want to touch bases with those other books from the other live a couple weeks ago. I'd like to get into some of the research on them as well. Okay. I'm going to read this little section. Also, there were numerous books, case studies, and other literature available from various researchers that provide documentation of dissociative behavior, often a person faced with extreme trauma. Okay. And, you know, you can, there's numerous amounts of resources for help out there with DID now. It's getting better to where there's availability. There's also availability in my videos. My videos are numbered for a reason. They will give you my personal life experiences, some things that'll make you smile, my cat, some things that are sad. Excuse me. I also have acid reflux. It happens. Because I deal with gut issues, and lately my body's going, I don't like you anymore. Duke says there are too many fakers abusing the system, which is really hurting the real people that need help. It is. And it's shutting down issues because there's so many people that think they might have a mental health disorder that don't, or some people that do and they're getting processed wrong, or the assessments aren't going through, or there's the new issue where they go from therapist to therapist to therapist until they get the assessment they want, that it causes more issues. There's a lot of things going on that scare me, especially someone who is disabled by the government. I am on SSDI for this disorder. I've had brain scans. I am medically braceleted. There's a lot that I go through. I'm reassessed every 3 to 6 months, depending on what needs to be done. So what do? I always say it this way. My survival skills, when tested at the place I went at, and that was in 2009, they stated that my survival skills were at 138.9, I do believe. I'd have to look at my paperwork. What that means is that I have a very high survival skill in order to stay safe and protect myself. And I had 4 doctors come in the room, and they were just they scared me at first. I didn't know what I thought I'd done something wrong, or I didn't know what was wrong with me. After all the testing, it was like 6 hours of testing the first day and then another 6 hours the next day. I don't remember half of it. I just remember them walking in and saying, we don't understand. You have a math level of a second grader, but then your survival skills are so high. And that was because we grew up taking care of ourselves. I'm not a Gen X. I'm actually a millennial, but I relate with Gen X because growing up, me and my brother, we had to take care of ourselves. My brother was driving a tractor by the time he was age 9 to help with the field work. We were feeding cattle by the time we could walk. We were chopping wood to, feed the wood stove in our old house. We survived so much that I don't even know where to begin. It'd take hours just to get through all that, Now, we're getting into the last of the book here because it's getting to be about that time. Everyone is born with only one personality, therefore there can be no such thing as MPD. So this is the part in the book towards the end where there are therapists and doctors that still do not believe. And the reason they don't believe is because they see a lot of this nonsense of people changing wigs, acting like different personalities, when in reality it is a very covert, very hidden disorder, as Bethany Brand states. Has DID been known to change the way they look? Yes. It's not something that we're aware of, and it does happen, but it's not something where they want to say, hey, I'm so and so. However, the psychiatrists who were therapists could not accept this argument. These therapists consistently observed patients who they claimed did have totally different personalities. Not only different personalities, but some patients' characters and different diseases, blood pressure readings, names, and even family histories were different. So I'm going to touch bases on that. My therapist goes with me to my medical exams. She's very professional, and she keeps track of things. She writes them down. Blood pressure, my body temperature changes, my vision has been known to change. These are things that come with the ID, because when my mind shuts off back here and lights up here as a child, and I age regress because I'm scared, especially with medical exams, my body changes. My heart rate changes. I would as a 4-year-old child. It's very, very strenuous on my vagus nerve, on my nervous system. I have hypertension. I have fibromyalgia from my nerves always being on that fight to flight response. So when I am in a small, age regress state, it gives me so much weakness. My head hurts, and it doesn't last very long. It seems like the smaller the age regress state, the harder it is on the body, and it seems to last between, I don't know, Duke, what is it, 15 minutes to an hour that these smaller states have. He's seen it more than I have. Keep in mind, I'm the person with it, but I I'm amnesic to it. So although I'm getting better at kind of hearing some of what I've done or hearing what comes out of my mouth, which is very weird. The professors claimed that rather than treat patients by integrating personalities, the therapist should address the delusion that there was more than one identity. The professors and instructors won the debate, and the condition was identified as dissociative identity disorder. Okay. And then they kind of get into the ICD-9 and whatnot. Some records appear tainted based on other factors that influence the authors, such as religious concerns. Again, I wish people would stop bringing religion into, treating DID, because a person is a person. It's a brain issue. Doesn't matter what religion they are. It's trauma, it's abuse, and it shouldn't be based on that. It was not until the development and use of the scientific methods by theorists such as Charrett, Janet, Freud, Bauer, and others that detailed observations and records kept improving in the field of psychology. The biggest breakthrough was when they finally brought in brain scans, and that was the difference between those that fake and those that do not. There's also the history check. My scars are documented of what I've been through. I've been told 2 reconstructive surgeries. Now, I remember one, but basically when a child is that little and abused, there is signs of that abuse, and it is put in your medical records, or a doctor later down the line will know something's not right. Okay. So I recommend that talk to your therapist about connecting your therapist with your medical team, because this is going to give you better treatment of your disorder, and there'll be an understanding if there's things that are complicated, especially if you have issues of self-harm, because if you land in the ER and you don't have somebody that understands DID, it could get very, very ugly, and I've been there. I've been an inpatient, and the way they treat you, some places are nice. Mine wasn't so nice, okay? And so it is best to, I always say, put your boots on and keep fighting. Keep fighting and get the help you need. And if one therapist don't work, try another, and, find somebody that's willing to work with you individually, So we're getting towards the end now here. And it says, more recently, in the late 1900s and early 21st century, the breaking of the DNA code has influenced the theories about how personalities are formed. More emphasis is being credited to genetic influence over environmental impact. There are also books documenting government studies such as Bluebird by Colin Ross that have evidence that MPD and DI and have evidence that MPD and disassociation can be initially created under controlled conditions. This resulted in credited to the United States Central Intelligence Agency in search to protect secrets. And I'm welcome to scan the CIA archives. There are quite a few things in there that are quite interesting. I have done a lot of history on it, and some of it's very hard to believe, but there were really people out there that did not care, and they did cause harm to people and cause them disassociation. I don't know how far it goes, if it has caused DID or not. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a professional. I just explain things based on my own experience. Heidi says, yes, the fakers and misleaders. Ugh, yes. Finally, there is the use of all historical information, theories, and data to develop new treatments and medications to assist sufferers of DID and MPD. While the most recent DSM edition lists these two terms interchangeably, some theorists are citing clear differences between these two conditions. It is safe to say that many more changes and more new theories regarding DID and MPD are forthcoming. Currently, now I want you to pay attention to this, because it is vital that you mention this to your therapist. If you do have DID and you've been through a lot of years of experience, and like me and Heidi, there is a place that's called currently the International Society for the Study of Dissociative Identity Disorder, located in Chicago, is probably the most recognized authority in the United States on the topic of DID. Now, the reason I bring that up is because they do case studies. All these therapists and doctors that specialize in DID work together, and we are examples of healing. And our journey and what the treatment that we are given helps others to feel better, to get better, the self-harming to ease, the medications to ease. I am not on any real medications other than lorazepam at times that I am in crisis situations, which doesn't happen very often anymore. The other thing that I find helpful in bringing anxiety down is non-THC based cannabinoids. Okay, so they make a oil that can go under your tongue. They make a low dose of gummy that can help. These are natural things because there are studies showing that some of these, like lorazepam and what are they called, Heidi? Benzo something? You know the medical stuff more than I do sometimes. People are trying to get off that stuff because they're finding out that it can cause dementia. And me and Heidi actually heard. Yes, thank you, Heidi. International Society for the Study of Trauma. Thank you. Study of Trauma and Disassociation. Duke says, when you stutter sometimes, brain and mouth, what we have here is a failure to communicate. Thank you, Duke. Duke here has a wonderful sense of humor. Yes, thank you, Heidi. Benzodiazepines. Heidi likes to correct my speech as well, and I thank her for it. To me, I do not get angry with her because it helps me to learn speech. As a child, I dealt with major issues with speaking, and I'm getting better at it. I'm learning to slow down. So Heidi is my little teacher. And the reason I brought up the lorazepam and things like that, it's a temporary fix. It's the same with depression medication and all that. Try not to stay on it if you can. If you can get therapy through like EMDR, CBT, DBT, EFT, DNMS, excuse me, there's also bilateral stimulation. These are methods that are natural to help activate your brain and to stop the use of some of those medications, you know, if you can get off of them. Benzodiazepine. Okay. Thank you. Pronunciation is not good for me. I have very little medical knowledge, so all I can do is comedy relief. Yes, Duke, you're very good at that. Duke is also very supportive in my therapy when he does go. It's not too often now, but it's nice to have him there, especially if I'm struggling with a memory that I can't comprehend. There are times where I will go over to him and I'll be like, I had this memory of this happening. Can you help me remember? One incident, it was very difficult because I'm one of them people that I want validation of a memory because I don't want to think it's false. I don't want to mess up with that and have a memory that, okay, is it made up, you know? And there was one time during some abuse that my brother, I thought my brother was looking for me on the three-wheeler, and it was not. My brother goes, no, right in therapy, he goes, no, it was Dad looking for you. And I just kind of, at first it was kind of a shock, and then it was like I wanted to cry, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, why was Dad coming to look for me, you know? And at that time, you know, they were trying to help me because I was so embedded in just allowing him to do these things because as a child, what are you going to do? You know, you can't fight back really. This is a grown man in his 20s, you know, abusing a 9-10-year-old child, you know. And even the abuse prior to that, it's still difficult. I remember that abuse more clearly than ever. But now when I get into like when I was younger, it's very difficult because even my sister was part of some of my trauma, the way she acted. And in some ways, I don't blame her because she had her own abuse going on. My brother had some of his own abuse going on. So then it's like we got to learn to process through it. And it just doesn't pay to blame other people. You know, it's something that you got to learn to deal with on your own, you know, and definitely don't blame yourself. It's something that happened, you know. Duke says Dad suspected something was, yes, he did. Well, he knew. He just didn't know how to handle it. Back then, baby boomers' parents were keep this a secret and deal with it among family, you know. And my alternative state 14 decided to tell the school counselor, and the government got involved, and my parents panicked. They didn't like anybody involved. But that was the only way to stop it because it was getting to the point where I was abused so badly I could have died. I had internal bleeding, and I was scared. So I went to a school counselor because I wanted it to stop, you know. So, all right. The second recommendation to collate and review a universal or recognized and accepted dictionary of the terminology related to DID. This will recognize an accepted dictionary of the terminology related to DID. This would universalize the terminology and result in reducing the misunderstandings in research and diagnosis. And I think I explained my ER visits, the monitoring, all that, the documentation. I have a substantial amount of evidence of my disorder. So when people say DID is fake, I don't believe it. I don't really care, because it's not part of my treatment, and it's not going to do me any good arguing with you or changing your mind. I really don't matter to me. So, and last page. Okay, so this page, these victims must also be helped to learn that you do not forget the trauma, but with help, learn to cope with the feelings that result from the trauma. Okay. Violence in our society has increased, leading to other severe traumas such as hostage taking. And they mention a lot of very detailed, and I won't do that on the live because it could cause an issue. Post-traumatic stress disorder, precursor of DID. DID is a coping option that therapists need to be prepared to diagnose and treat. If they do not, they need to find somebody that can. This thesis adds to the information available to help reach those goals, okay? And average, usually people that have DID, they don't even know they have it. Everybody that I know that has it, that I've known, they didn't know they had it. They suspected complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I've been diagnosed with BPD. I would say the course of over 20 years. I started counseling at 14, and it just kind of went from there. And then I pretended it never happened, I guess, in my own way. I gained weight. I wasn't myself. My brother noticed changes in my personalities constantly. I went through 28 jobs that I lost, and the government got involved, and they just felt that I wasn't able to work. And I love working. I love drawing. I love cleaning. I love doing a lot of different things. I tried to cashier. I found if I did part-time jobs, I did a little better. So I would work like 2 or 3 part-time jobs to get through, because I had a daughter and I needed to take care of her. So somehow I managed. I don't know how I managed, but I managed. There was like a motherly side of me that took over to make sure things were okay. And then it just, after that, it was up and down, you know. So Heidi says, my life made sense when I was finally diagnosed. It was actually comforting. I had an opposite effect. I was glad that I kind of knew, but I wanted to prove him wrong. So I literally started studying on DID. I'm like, I can prove him wrong. I don't have this. And I kept pushing for BPD because I'm like, I have that. There's no way I have DID, because I never knew I switched. Nobody really mentioned it. They said I had mood swings. So I was just like, nope. And after the inpatient stay, there was no denying it. The evidence they had, I was, yeah. And I don't mind mentioning my inpatient stay. That was in Green Bay, Wisconsin, at Willow Creek. So if you want to look it up, more power to you. I really don't care. You didn't even know you had it, and even denied you had it for a while. It's tough to figure out. Yes, Duke, thank you. Yeah, it was it's difficult, because if I always tell everybody, my artist arm is very important to me, clean artist arm. And if somebody told me that cutting this arm off would get rid of it, I'd do it in a heartbeat, because DID doesn't just affect the brain, guys. It affects the body. And over the years, it causes many issues. A lot of people that have DID go through a lot of problems with nervous system issues, IBS issues, fibromyalgia, POTS, which I don't have POTS. I've been told, but I do have severe fibro. I'm now in the process of dealing with degenerative disease. I have cysts all over my body in places I don't even want to mention, which are causing huge issues. One part is my uterus, and the bleeding comes on and off. It's kind of like, I don't know why, maybe because of the stress. And I'm just tired of hurting. I'm tired of the insomnia. I'm tired of the pain. And my therapist believes that some of the symptoms are somatic, which means the pain that is on and off can be somatic, which is what the brain is causing when it's under stress. Okay. Some of the symptoms have eased. My side pain has eased. I don't get that anymore because we figured out where that trauma was. But because of over the years of being this way, my body has, it's kind of like if you run a belt. My brother picks on me because I mow really fast. Okay. I like mowing. Mowing is comforting because of the vibration of the mower seems to help ease fibro pain. It's crazy. I don't know why. But he keeps saying, you keep doing that, your transmission's going to give out and your belts are going to break. And so because I'm on high mode and my blades are going too fast and my belt is overreacting and gets too hot, my body's going, ugh, and my belts are breaking and my motor's giving out. I hope that makes sense. I'm sure Duke will love that definition. Heidi says, oh, I tried to deny it. Yeah. Heidi put, you're a meanie. My alters say so. Yes, Heidi. But yeah, it's a process. And anyway, I think I'm going to let you all go, and I will try to do this again. I still have 4 more books that I'd like to touch bases with, but I really want to touch base on this new book. It was helpful. There was some things I wished he would have got more into the detail of DID, the fact that he's putting the history of DID on the book, but he talks about war trauma more. It just kind of threw me off. It was more like a thesis, which may be great for beginners that are in college, but I don't know. So anyway, that's all I have today. If anybody else has any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to call it quits tonight, and I can probably touch bases again on some of the other books. I have the pile sitting here, and I'd like to get into definitely the trauma model and dissociative identity disorder, the really big, thick book, which has like 17 different doctors. This one here, I really want to get into this one. As you can see, I was very busy. I use this one a lot. It's an older version, but it has a lot in it that is very helpful. And so, and even if it's an older book, who cares? It's got a lot of information. That's how you figure things out. So, but Duke says, perfect analogy. Yes. Night, everybody. He mentions this paper. Not sure what you mean on that one, but okay. Oh, yeah. Because the way he mentions how it's, yeah. And the fact that he's just, even he just looks kind of like he's kind of grumpy. I'm not dissing the doctor by any means. I think he did an okay job with the research, but I wished he would have mentioned the patients more, or, at least studied. Like Ross has a program in his institute where, he talks about how he wants students to come in and get a visual on how to deal with somebody that has DID. And I think that's something that needs to be brought into light more often, because it's not something you can read about and you're better off seeing patients and see how they work with the patients, to get an idea how to handle it. Most patients are not violent. Some can be, but most patients are not violent. They are more into harming themselves than they would be you, especially females with this disorder. Males, I am told some have had some violent streaks. I have never really got involved in the reading with that, but hello, Barbara. It's nice to meet you. Late to the show, but thank you for doing this. I will check back for your next live session. Not a problem. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. Again, keep in mind, I do not have a psychology degree. I'm just a person that has the disorder that talks about it from the books and research that I study. And Heidi is also very educated on it. She has experienced this for over 30 years. I am over 20 years. So I want that book, the thick one. Yes, it's a very good book. And, if you guys want, I can probably get into this one, the next live. It is, gosh, I don't know. It has 3 different authors. And the acknowledgments are like, I don't know, it's like 600 pages long. But there's so much in it. Current treatment and how to deal with altered kids, and there's just so much. And definitely, Heidi, if you want to, if you feel up to it, I don't know how you do a collab about the book, but we can try that too, or we can discuss it in private and then have an idea what to talk about with it, So anyway, all right. Well, I am going to let you guys go, and sometime maybe next week or the week after, we will do another live and get into some of the older books that I have. And I do have some other books that I'm going to order. I constantly try to educate on the disorder, and so is that book available to buy on Amazon? Maybe leave a link if it is. Actually, I don't order my books from Amazon very often. I have ordered my books the last 10 years from thrift books. Why? Because thrift books is a used bookstore that people can sell their books from, and it supports people that are selling used books. Because my books, I don't mind if there's sketch marks or writing in them. And it's such a small company, but a very good, honest company. So a lot of times I try to keep my books under like $10 and sometimes $20. Excuse me, piece of hair. So that way, if I don't like the book, I don't feel like I had such a loss. I also, if I find a book useful and I no longer use it, I like to donate it to, people that don't have the funds to get a book with DID, to help their therapist or to help them. I've also donated my books to my therapist's library. This helps others that have PTSD issues or have been through trauma to have books available free for them to read. This is something I promote other people to do that have read about DID or BPD or PTSD or CPTSD. Please share your books. Do not be afraid to help others if you can, because it makes the process move faster and healing faster, because I don't want you to end up like me, where you have degenerative disease, fibro and nerve issues and autoimmunities and stuff. Barbara states, I was diagnosed with DID, and after coming out of a long period of denial over it, I'm still really struggling to figure out much of anything about my system. So any knowledge on this is amazing. You will find multiple videos with numbers in my videos, some based on the media issue, some based on books, some based on personal experiences, and also therapists and research. I link a lot of different things. So sorry to come on here and overshare. No, you're perfectly fine. That's the whole idea. I don't glamorize it. I don't bop around. I don't change personalities on here. This is me. And I talk about it in great detail because that's what it's about. It's a very covert disorder, and it's being, spread with misinformation. So we want to change that. You missed my last comment, smirk remark. Great. Thank you, Barbara says. Missed your last, Heidi says, did you stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night? They dated me. No. You'll have to explain that one later. But anyway, yes, I don't really advertise my lives because that would make me very nervous. So I try to do it when I feel up to it. I don't want to just jump on or put something ahead of time. So, but all videos are available to watch, Barbara. You're more than welcome to. And please don't be afraid to share my videos with your therapist or psychologist. I recommend a lot of different psychologists and help and numbers. And I'm part of the studies for DID. And my therapy has EMDR, CBT, DBT, and a new one is called DNMS by Shirley, which you're welcome to look up here online on YouTube. There are other channels to follow that also educate in DID. One of them is Shirley Davis. She is under the name Dissociative Identity Disorder in a Nutshell here on YouTube. And she has over, I do believe, 40, 50 years of experience. She also has a bachelor's degree and is working on a master's degree. She does conferences and whatnot. So lots of availability and help out there. So Duke says, if you list the ISBN number of the book, then people could look for it at library or other book buying options. Yeah, it's difficult because I just buy through thrift books most of the time. And usually if you look at the book, you can find it, just by looking up the name. You know, I want people to work harder at getting to take care of themselves. The other issue with DID is a lot of people want a golden key, and there's no golden key. You have to work at this very hard, and you have to do your own work. There's helpful tips and understanding out there. So like me just holding this book up is enough for somebody to go, oh, okay, I can look that up. I can screenshot that. You know, it's way different than it was back then, so that they can easily find the books too. No worries. Heidi says there are commercials. I'm not a doctor, but I did stay at the Holiday Inn Express last night. Oh, okay. Okay. I don't even know if I've ever, I try to avoid hotel stays if I can. For one, I'm not happy with some of the cleaning services. I'm very OCD, so yeah. So, all right. Well, I'm going to let everybody go, and I will talk to you all later, and thank you for being here. And like I said, the resources are available in the bio. Check it out. So, implying that I was smart choice. Yes. All right. Good night, alls, and thanks for being here, and I appreciate it. So, night, night.